Okay, has the NRLW been a success? I would say yes, for the most part. There's still areas of improvement and areas of growth that I think will come in time. But this is the first season, as when they kick off on July the 3rd, which is in 2 days' time, where we'll have a 12-team league. The Canterbury Bulldogs are playing their inaugural season in the NRLW, and the New Zealand Warriors make a welcome return to the NRLW after a several-year hiatus, in part due to the COVID pandemic. And you've got to go back to 2017 to now to see the growth in the women's game in Australia and New Zealand. The gap between Australia and New Zealand and England with the Super League has grown massively, absolutely massively. I think the Rugby League World Cup that we had a couple of years ago, England were okay. Obviously didn't make the final, which everyone hoped, but New Zealand, when they played that semi-final, were superior. Let's be honest, I'm not arguing. I watched that game, I reviewed that game. New Zealand were superior in fitness, skill level, intensity, training, coaching. They were a cut above. What happened in Vegas at the start of this season has shown that in that small time frame, in part because of the NRLW and the growth in the game, the growth in professionalism, the coaching, the skill set, the player development, the pathways, what has happened in a very short space of time is that gap has exploded. It just, they're not on the same level anymore. It's a complete. The NRLW is streets ahead of the Women's Super League here in the UK. Streets ahead, and it's no contest. Now, I still think there's areas of improvement and areas of growth to come. Since 2018, we've seen the Women's Origin go from one game, and the inaugural Women's Origin game also in 2018, before that it was Interstate Challenge, to a 3-game series. Now, the 3-game series has only been going for a couple of years. We obviously had that 1 year where we had that 2-game series, which was a bad idea, didn't work, and was very quickly scrapped. Mistakes have been made on the way. The Australian Rugby League Commission, both Queensland and New South Wales, realised this didn't work as a format. The players didn't like it. The fans didn't like it. The media, the commentators, they weren't keen on the idea. Very, very quickly, Peter V'landys, Andrew Abdo go, we cocked up. We're not going to do this. Next year's going to be a 3-game series. And everyone was happy. Now, what I think in time will happen, because we're not going to see expansion for the next 3 to 4 years. The next TV deal's coming in 2027. We're not going to see expansion before then. We may not see expansion in 2027. It may be later. But what we're going to see in the next 3 years is the Bulldogs hopefully establish themselves and the league become pretty competitive in the sense that anyone can beat anyone. We've had the odd season where there's always that one really bad side that is flogged. I don't think we're going to see that with the amount of player movement we've had to have to get 12 teams, plus the pathways that are now producing players. Because in years past, many, many years ago, before the NRLW was set up, the pathways for women stopped at the age of 11. So girls and women, you play alongside the boys at school till the age of 11, and then you weren't allowed to play rugby league until you were 18 again. So that pathway system stopped. So a lot of kids that wanted to play the game couldn't. And so if you've got a brother and a sister, let's say they're twins. The brother can continue playing until he's 18. He may get picked up by a senior NRL or Super League side here in England and go on to have a really good career, earn some good coin, have that opportunity. The girls' side of things, 11 years old, you've got to stop playing for 7 years. You don't get that skill development, you don't build up that muscle mass, you don't build up that endurance, and so therefore you have that 7 years where you're not allowed to play. That isn't the case anymore, and we've seen the production line of talent, these young players at 18, 19, really taking to rugby league really well. They've developed now through the pathways, which weren't there before, and are now filling out rosters. A lot of these teams, their average age is about 22, 23, 24. They're actually younger than the men's equivalent rosters in the NRL. We're seeing very young, very fast-paced rugby league. We're seeing a lot of intensity in the collision. It's still not at the same pace as the men's, and we are still seeing a lot of handling errors here or there, although they are getting better. The skill set has massively improved. The fitness has massively improved. We've gone from 60-minute games to 70-minute games. So for the first couple of seasons, they played 30-minute halves, and it was 60-minute games. Since, I think it was either 2021 or 2022, one of those seasons, they decided to extend the halves to 35 minutes to make it 70-minute games. And eventually I do think the NRLW goes to full 80-minute games with 40-minute halves. I think that's the mistake the Women's Super League here in England has made, is having those 8-minute games too quick, too soon. And we can argue about women's sport, should they have rule adjustments. We do have those rule adjustments. We have the 40-30 here in the women's game rather than the 40-20 in the men's, because for the most part women can't kick the ball as far. The physiology of the women's body is different to the men's. The physicality is different. Although some of the female kickers can actually kick a 40-20. It's doable. But there are some rule variations, such as the 35-minute halves, for example. I also think another change that will eventually come in time is, at the moment everyone plays each other once, and then I think the top 4 go to the finals. I think they'll expand the final series, and I also think eventually every team will play each other twice, so you'll have a longer season, which I think a lot of people want. They either want the season to start earlier or have a longer season, so women's state of origin, much like the men's, comes mid-season. At the moment, women's origin is played in their pre-season, and I think that does impact the origin game a little bit. You do see a lot of handling errors and a bit of a stop-start with the momentum. If you were to play women's origin mid-season, I think you would see a far better origin product than it already is, which is pretty fantastic. The attendance figures and the viewership figures do back up the fact that the league has been successful. The viewership figures are really good, the attendance figures continue to break records every year, and now they're going to get their own magic round. What we're also seeing is a lot more families going to games. A lot more families are going to games as well. So you're introducing kids to rugby league, you're introducing families to rugby league, because you might have that one member of the family who's a rugby league, rusted on fan. He or she decides to take the rest of their family along, buys a family ticket, a family package, brings the partner, brings the kids, maybe the cousins, maybe the grandparents, and you see family groups going, which you don't always necessarily see at a normal NRL or Super League game. You wouldn't wait to see a father and his son, but you do see family groups, but you seem to see it more in the women's game than the men's, from what I can gather from the games that I watch. But the changes I think should happen is teams play each other twice, expand the final series, and when they do look at expansion down the track, it's going to be interesting if they add 2 teams at a time, like they've done this time round, or do what the NRL's done and have a pathway going, this team's joining this year, this team's joining this year, this team's joining this year, have a planned team per season, or we'll do 2 teams at a time, 2 teams at a time, 2 teams at a time. That's going to be interesting how they work out the expansion in the future. Right now, what we know is they've made no further commitment on expansion until at least 2027, maybe 2028. So they're sort of going to allow the 12-team league to stabilise, or the Bulldogs to stabilise and hopefully be as competitive as possible as soon as possible. I don't think we're going to see one team be awfully bad and get battered every week. We've had a couple of seasons like that. I do think the talent's been spread pretty evenly across all 12 teams. We've seen a lot of the Kiwi players actually re-sign with the Warriors. So a lot of the New Zealand players were playing around the NRLW, should we say, and a lot of them have decided to gravitate back to the Warriors. So we're seeing a very strong New Zealand-based squad for the Warriors, which is maybe good, maybe bad. We shall see. But we're also seeing some of the Aussie and English girls look at the Warriors as a potential location to play for, which will be interesting to see how that impacts the Warriors in their return to the NRLW. It's going to be fun, but when expansion happens, you are going to have to weaken the other teams to spread the talent around. Question of talent dilution. I actually think the way they've dealt with the expansion has been quite good. It's been quite measured. Then you look at the AFLW and the mess the AFL has made of that by expanding too fast, too quick, and getting a really inferior product. And as I say, the viewership and the attendance kind of back that up. But that's my view on things. I think it's been a success with room for improvement. I think, as I say, eventually we get a longer season that starts earlier, where it's fully professional, where all the players are fully professional. I think we'll see each team play each other home and away, and I do think eventually we will see an expanded final series where maybe 6 teams make the finals rather than 4. Maybe 8 teams make the finals down the track as expansion comes along and we go past 12 teams. So I do think there's room for improvement and growth, but I think it has been a success. Place in the comment section below if you think it's been a success, or has it been lukewarm? I think it's been a success. And where do you think the NRLW can improve down the track? But from me for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.